No, we're not going to sing.
No.
This is a very special Father's Day for us. 40 Father's Days ago, Dan and I made our way to this church for the first time so that Dan could fill the pulpit that Sunday. He had just graduated from Grace Seminary, and our baby daughter was 3 months old. Ivan French had asked if he could give his name to Max Young as a potential candidate, and that Sunday was the first step in that process. A few weeks later, Wolf Lake Baptist Church called him to meet the challenge of pastoring this congregation. The 1st of August, we moved our belongings from the furnished one-bedroom apartment that we had occupied for the first 5 years of our marriage into the comparatively huge parsonage and began to settle in. We may have rattled around for a little while, but it did not take long before we managed to fill up every nook and cranny. I remember lying in bed that first night, unable to sleep, though totally exhausted, just wondering what this new adventure would hold for us. Unlike Dan, I had not grown up in church and had really only gone to 2 since I had become a believer. One was a little church similar to this one, and the other was Moody Church in Chicago. I knew nothing about being a pastor's wife, and even less about being a mother. Overwhelmed just doesn't capture enough of the feelings. But we were both excited to tackle the path ahead. I am afraid I too often slipped into survival mode, however, and couldn't always be the helper Dan needed, but his faith held him up, and the support of the board he answered to was always there for him. The godly leadership of this church has always been a great source of its strength and foundational to its testimony. We thought we knew what ministry was, and it is many of those things: teaching, helping, being there for people, sharing the gospel, and making sure the church is a light in the community. But with a baby, and in just a few more years, 2 more to come, our young and growing family kept us busy. For me, it seemed there weren't enough hours in the day to do justice to ministry opportunities and meet family needs. It took me a while to figure out that family was my ministry, and I had to settle in and focus there for a bit. Lessons we both learned over and over again had to do with the importance of living out our faith in day-to-day life. The people around you are always watching and care way more about how you act and deal with circumstances than what you say about how to deal with circumstances. The Lord has made sure we have had opportunities to show you what we are made of. Above all, I hope you have seen our faith in action, the committed love that Dan and I have for each other, and the unconditional love we have for our children. Dan learned early in this experience that there would be aspects to his job that weren't in his pastoral studies teaching. Probably the most unexpected part of being here has been the opportunities for service. Aside from the hours of study and sermon preparation and time out and about visiting the sick and homebound, there were tasks that required just plain hard work. Beside the regular yard work and snow shoveling, he's found himself alongside the men of the church, tearing off a roof or shingling or helping with whatever DIY project they have elected to tackle. I have to admit that I have kept him more than busy with updates at the house. He hasn't always felt up to the tasks, but has been willing to learn and work hard. The hot summer day he came home with near heat exhaustion from helping a neighbor bale hay was a testimony to his tenacity. Much younger days. When we came here, we thought it would be only for a few years. We really hoped the Lord would lead us back to Iowa so our kids could grow up nearer our extended family. Several times we thought we saw doors open, but they always closed, and God seemed to be saying we were needed here. Our peers seemed to be moving around at the drop of a hat, but we committed at the very start of our ministry that we would not go anywhere unless it was clearly where God's will to take us there. He has chosen to leave us here. My parents and Dan's dad are gone now, and God faithfully saw us through dealing with that long distance. Our kids moved away, and God has seen us through that as well. We are so blessed by the family God has chosen for us and the ministry He has called us to. He's placed our kids within our reach, especially now having one of their families in our church. We do not take that closeness for granted. We might had we never had to say goodbye. Lessons learned.
At every turn, we've been so blessed. See, I can't sing, and I really can't speak either. We've been so blessed to call this church body our home and our family. And I look out at so many, and some of our best people are already gone. And they had such a big impact in my life. And from the very beginning, I accepted Christ in the big Sunday school room in the basement with Mabel. And that started that journey, but so many have played such a big part in growing this family into what it is. I don't even know how many Eager Beaver lessons Dan and Mindy taught us. And who knew that beavers could explain everything you needed to know about the Bible and how to put that into practice in your own life. But they do. And after that, Max taught us in high school, and that's a big undertaking. And he, worked us all the way through the Bible and got to Revelation, and even challenged us with whether we were pre, mid, or post-trib believers, and then he left it at that. That was it. But Max specifically taught so much about that the world is going to call you to be something, but God calls you to be something different. Max taught me that so well. So many people have had such a big part in this family. Like I said, and in raising me, we're so blessed for this to be our family. This church family has loved us so incredibly well. My biggest decisions, like I said, I was saved in this church, I was married in this church, all three of my kids have been dedicated in this church, and from a distance, you have prayed for them and loved them so well. And I know personally that means that you love the kids that are growing up here so well. This church does that so incredibly well. You raise us so well. I'm so thankful for the way that my dad has served here for 40 years. I obviously don't have a great memory of the first handful that they were here. I'm not that old, but I'm so thankful that we've been allowed to grow up here, all of us, my parents, my siblings, myself, our kids. I'm not sure if this is the right time to say it, but it's Father's Day and they let me come up here, so I'm gonna go for it. Dad has loved me and us, our family, and this church family so incredibly well that the concept and an idea of a Heavenly Father was never difficult for me to understand. I saw him faithfully love my mom, faithfully love the three of us kids who were not always very lovable, faithfully love the grandkids, which are much easier to love, I know they are, and faithfully love and serve this church through difficult times, stand by families in difficult times, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes for days at a time. He has loved all of us so well, and that has given me such an amazing earthly picture of what God does for us, and I am so incredibly thankful for that. I'm so thankful for these 40 years that God kept us here, that God kept my dad here, that this is our family. Yes, I have amazing biological grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and all that, and they're awesome. But this is the family that helped raise me. This is the family that I come back to. This is what I call home. When we talk about what we're doing at Christmas and what we're doing over the summer, we refer to that as we're going home. This is home for us. This church is our home. This church is our home family. And I'm so thankful that even though it might have been in my parents' desire at some point to go back to their home, we can understand that because it's always in our desire to come back here, to come home. But that's not what God's done for us, and that's not what God did with my parents, and I'm so thankful that they were willing to be faithful and stay here and serve here.
Thank you for your love and patience and your generosity for these many years. We look forward to however many more. God chooses to give us as your servants.